Hey CTK, it's customary for the vicar or rector to give an annual report for the year, and this is usually done at the annual meeting, which is sometime in the late winter or early spring. But I think it makes more sense to do this the week of Advent 1, which is the beginning of our liturgical year, this coming Sunday. We live in God's world. We live in God's time, and so Advent 1 marks a big transition in our annual life. A vicar's report has two main purposes. First, we're going to reflect on the last year. We're going to give thanks for what God has done at this parish, identify areas that we need to improve or stretch ourselves. So I've done my best to gather up all that's happened into themes and categories so that we can really get a good look of the whole year in this report. A whole year is a lot to take in. As I comment on each aspect of the last year, 2022, I'll also give my hopes and plans for the next year, 2023. At the end, I'll give an overall summary of the year and the focuses for 2023. It's not coincidental that this Vicar's report is being published on the same week as our pledge drive. While our tithes are to be given to God as a simple act of obedience and faith, it makes it a lot easier to give when you are excited about what God is doing at your parish. We have so many reasons to be thankful about the last 12 months, excited about what's happening now, and hopeful for another great year in our little instance of the kingdom of God here at Christ the King. So let's start big picture here. Some vital signs. We're a church plant. In 2020, we became a mission in name. And in 2021 and 2022, I think we became a mission in culture. A big part of becoming a mission is to find a home where life and culture can start to take a more defined shape. So in January, we entered our building, our sanctuary. I'm sitting in it right now. You may remember the ceremony where I beat the narthex doors with the processional cross so hard that it broke the cross and it chipped the door. After 8 months of meeting outside in the hot sun and setting up in the cold Pearson Middle School cafeteria, we were eager to get into our new home as a mission. And when we came into the nave, we filled it with the smoke of incense, declaring liturgically that this new space was like the Temple of Solomon, filled with the presence of God. 2022 has been a year of home sweet home. And our home has been filled with beautiful moments where we sense that God is at work. We've had a months-long process of planning a sanctuary renovation for this space. And we're in the phase of gathering quotes. We hope to have new flooring, new paint, new lighting, and art before Easter 2023. We've taken good steps at solidifying our membership role and have created a membership class that we have on its fourth cycle soon. Looking ahead, we will become a full parish in January of 2023. Bishop Hill will make a visit, and we will be officially a full parish in status at that point. And then we will have the job of electing a vestry and ratifying our bylaws. Currently, there are 230 souls that would call Christ the King home. We are blessed to have 4 clergy and 8 staff, 3 working for the church full-time. And so 2022 has been a big growth year for us, both in terms of parishioners, but also staff. But CTK is much more than a parish status and membership roles. We are an outpost of the kingdom, and we have a kingdom culture. At the beginning of the plant, we laid out 5 core values that have proven to be inspired and inspiring for what kind of parish we hoped to be. And I'm going to walk through each of those core values and show how God has blessed us in that value, and then share with you some plans for continued growth in that value. Our first CTK core value is together in life. Our cell group's purpose statement begins, cell groups exist to live out the CTK core value together in life. So it makes sense that I would comment first on cell groups. Well, they have done a really great job of living out that core value. Currently, there are 8 cell groups in order of age: Marietta, what they like to call Smerbleton, Canton West, Kennesaw, Canton East, North Atlanta, Powder Springs, and Vinings. So to put this in perspective, in 2020, there were 2 cell groups. Well, 1 and then 2. We ended the year with 2. And in 2021, we ended the year with 4. In 2022, there are 8, 2, 4, 8. We are replicating every single year. So we're living up to our names as cells, replicating cells. Now, as you can see from the CTK group cell group map, our cell groups now span the entire area of North Atlanta. We have geographic coverage. We have the locality that we were seeking when we started the idea of cell groups. We wanted them to be local and intergenerational. And given how spread out we were, that was not always possible. So there's been a long process of splitting cell groups in order to cover areas more locally. I don't anticipate or desire that we will have 16 cell groups next year. I don't think that the doubling will continue. The process of splitting cell groups has been really difficult. And cell groups thrive when there are deep, trusting relationships. And that takes time. It takes consistent investment. Stability in groups thrive whenever there are longer periods of time, whenever they can be stable. So moving forward, we are more likely to start new cell groups with new people. If a lot of people come into the church from a certain area, we will ask them to start their own cell group rather than splitting cells to cover geographic area. I would like to see a new cell group start in East Cobb in 2023. But other than that, we are really just going to let our cell groups have a season of maturing and deepening in relationship. I've also been so pleased with the culture of these cell groups. Every single day, someone in the parish has a joy or a burden to share. And every single day, that person's cell group responds as the hands and feet of Jesus. No one at our church has ever moved alone. Everyone has received a meal when a crisis hits. We have developed a culture of petitionary prayer that is local and personable and actionable. It would be easy to take for granted all that has happened in a cell group. It might seem normal. This is not normal. And it's really encouraging as a vicar to look at what God's doing in the cell groups. Everyone at CTK has their people. They know where they'd go if they faced a big problem of their own. They do not feel forgotten. You have done that. You have done that by committing to be in the same place with the same people twice every month, to clunk your way through evening prayer, to discuss books that not everyone has read. These are not life groups. They're not affinity groups. They're not clubs. They are geographic, intergenerational, missional groups. You did not pick these people, but they belong to you and you to them. And so I'm really proud of your work in your cell groups. Take a minute to think back on the last 12 months, and 2 things come to mind: marriages and babies. I mentioned these with the topic of cell groups because our cell groups have done a really great job of celebrating these great gifts within their own community. Every couple and every baby has had a shower hosted by their cell group or the church. Congratulations to the 6 couples married this year at Christ the King, or within Christ the King. Josh and Charlotte Tryon, Garrett and Haley Holt, James and Chloe O'Rourke, Jack and Arena Shelley, Patrick and Ashlyn Anders, Nate and Gray Thompson. I had the incredible honor of counseling each of these couples as they prepared for marriage. Also, congratulations to Garrett and Aaron for having the best groomsman picture of all time. The other big blessing has been all of the babies. There have been 8 babies born at CTK, and there was another baby that came to us when the Amarals moved to town. And there are at least 2 more buns in the oven, as they say. We rejoice over the safe deliveries of Winifred and Winifred. Both are sweet Winifreds. Clementine, Meadow, Henry, Kylie and Keegan, and Luella. So our second CTK core value is deep in discipleship. And perhaps the way we've grown the most this year is in that core value. I'm very pleased with the impact of our clergy calls during Lent and Advent. At least twice per year, every parishioner has a one-on-one conversation with one of their clergymen about how they are doing spiritually, and specifically how their rule of prayer is developing. Clergy calls during Advent begin this week, and so I really, as one of your clergymen, am looking forward to touching base with each and every one of you to hear how God is working in your life. We've had another strong year of catechesis for our adults, for our young adults, and our children. Our primary catechesis series in 2022 for the adults was on the Apostolic Fathers. But another series included vocation. Another one was on the Psalms. We did one on Philemon and on the historic liturgies of marriage, visitation of the sick, and the burial office. And that was just to name a few. I'm really pleased to announce that regarding catechesis in 2023, we have our new flagship series picked out and almost completely planned out. The series for next year will be a big one. It'll be, I don't remember exactly how many weeks, but it'll be more than the other flagship series we've had, something around 20 weeks regarding this topic. And the topic title is How Anglicans Read the Bible. So we're going to focus especially on the scriptures in our new flagship series. We're going to study especially how the church has interpreted the Bible, and we'll flesh out that hermeneutical study with case studies in books like Genesis, Leviticus, one of the Gospels, a Pauline epistle, and maybe Revelation. That'll be really fun. So another big announcement is a change of format that begins in January. For the last few months, we've had in-person catechesis every other week and potlucks on the other weeks. And then we would have online catechesis only on the week of the potlucks. But online catechesis wasn't working as well as I'd hoped. And in-person catechesis wasn't working well for families with young children, since it ended at 12:30, and then they'd have to drive home, and then they'd have to make lunch. And by then, their kids are melting. But because we value catechesis so much, we've come up with, I think, a little bit of a crazy, awesome plan. We're going to have in-person catechesis 3 out of every 4 weeks of the month. 3 out of every 4. It'll be on the first, third, and fourth week of the month. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to cater a lunch every single time we have catechesis. So we're going to call it catered catechesis. On our one non-catechesis week, which would be the second week, there will be no catechesis. We're only going to have a potluck feast that we're going to start referring to as an AGAPE feast. This will happen again on the second Sunday of every month. So to be clear, first, third, and fourth Sundays will be catered catechesis with lunch provided. It'll end still at 12:30. And the second Sunday of the month will be the AGAPE feast. If there's a fifth Sunday, we will continue to have catechesis for singing and music, and we call that Singing Sunday. So that's the new plan for 2023 regarding how we do the time after the liturgy on Sundays. A couple other things we're doing for Deep in Discipleship is we've started a young adult catechesis class that meets every single week under the pastoral care and direction of Deacon Spencer Amaral. And so currently they're studying the 39 articles. Speaking of young adults, we've had another group of teenagers go through our catechumen class this year. This is a 6-month weekly commitment that involves meeting with mentors and clergy, lay mentors and clergy, and writing a whole life story. This program is the creation of our director of catechesis, Dr. Kyle Hughes, who is putting his doctorate to amazing use for the kingdom of God. He masterminded this entire catechumen program, which, needless to say, goes very deep in discipleship. Deacon Kyle has also put together another program called the Adult Confirmation Cohort. So for our second cohort that we've done, we condensed it down into 2 evenings of 4 lectures that were designed to walk someone through a thorough understanding of the what and the why of confirmation. We're looking forward to offering the Adult Confirmation Cohort and the Young Adult Catechumen class at least once more in 2023 for our next class of confirmands. Another way we've gone deep in discipleship this year is through our retreats. Both the young adults and the ladies went on a retreat this year. Both studied the book of Ephesians. just as the men's fellowship did in their meetings back in the spring. In spring 2023, I'd like to take the men on their first retreat. I'm trying to find a monastery that would be a good fit for our retreat. The young adults will go back to Laguna Beach in the summer, and the ladies will take another mountain retreat in the fall. But I'm really encouraged about how we're adding retreats for all of the groups within the church. I think that's a really good place for us to go deeper in our discipleship. One way we've tried to go a little deeper this year is by studying books. We've done book studies in our cell groups. 3 of them is the plan for this year, and 2 in 2023. Because we are a tithing church, we've been able to purchase our 3 book studies. We've been able to purchase a book for each family in the church. We studied Peter Kreeft's 3 Philosophies of Life in the fall, looking at the wisdom books of Job, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. In 2023, each family will receive a copy of Carl Trueman's Strange New World and Matthew Bates' Gospel Allegiance. We'll study both of these works in our cell groups. We will also be able to invest heavily in our book nook. It's already stocked with about 60 titles, and we're hoping to add more this year. And this has done a lot to get our church reading deeply in the great spiritual writings. If you're feeling like we've been having a lot about deep in discipleship, you're right. We've grown a lot in this particular way. But perhaps the most exciting thing that's happening at CTK regarding discipleship is our 4 vocational cohorts that have begun in 2022. For those with children or who desire to live out the parental role within the church, there is the parent cohort that meets once a month for a breakfast before the liturgy on Sundays. For homes that have 3 or more generations living in them, we have an intergenerational cohort that meets a couple times during the year to encourage those families. For single young men who desire to live godly lives while waiting for marriage, there is the Hall of Tyrannus. And for those who want to commit to keeping the prayer book rule of life, along with a deep theological reading and regular spiritual direction, we have the community of St. Augustine. And so all of these vocational cohorts are meant to support CTK members in living out their respective vocations in the church. One event that functions like a vocational cohort is the Christian Educators Summit, which drew teachers from 9 area schools this year. We do not have plans overall to add any more cohorts in 2023, though I would like to see something like the Hall of Tyrannus happen for single women who desire that. A lot of focus this year went into our discipleship of our children. We took stock of just what God was doing at our church sometime in 2021 and recognized that God was bringing a lot of children to us. We have a ton of children at the church, and we needed to invest in that great gift. Some of my favorite moments have been seeing all of the children crammed together, watching the baptisms, singing the Lorica, and listening to the toasts afterwards. This year, we've added 2 catechesis classes for children so that we could be more age and even gender specific with our catechesis. We also switched to having long-term catechists in each class, and this has done a lot to deepen the discipleship in our children's catechesis. Mark Thompson has continued to do an amazing job with our children's choir, and Jennifer Thompson spearheaded a new Bible memory program this year, and our children are learning a significantly higher amount of Scripture than the year before. This year, we introduced monthly children's sermons, and there's been a lot of positive feedback on those. We will continue to have children's sermons each month, at least once per month in 2023. Our commitment to having children in the liturgy is having good effect. It's not an easy thing to invite children so fully into the liturgical life of the church. But our children feel loved here and included here. Their imaginations are filled with the liturgy of heaven, and they are singing spiritual songs in their hearts to the Lord, as St. Paul says. So I want you to check out these 3 quick videos that show what I mean about how our children are taking in this vision of being very much a part of the body of Christ.
Okay. Oh, come let us sing unto the Lord. Come rejoice and strike us our salvation. A little show free. I bind unto self-death.
Our third core value is centered on communion, and I've been very pleased with how we as a church have centered our lives around the rhythm of weekly Eucharist. But I feel like we took a big step in 2022 with orienting our year around the major feast days. I said in 2021 that Christians should throw the best parties, and that those parties should be inspired by the great acts of God through Jesus Christ. Well, in 2022, we did that. The Epiphany Feast at the Canton Rock Barn, with all the great food and the dancing and the magician, was really wonderful. I will always remember this year's Holy Week. It was the first Holy Week that we've had in our forever space. We added a focus on how children would experience Holy Week by having Stations of the Cross for them, and we had hot cross buns after, and we buried the sepulcher that was made by one of our parishioners. We were really trying to use embodied acts to make the truth of Holy Week real for our children. On Easter, the children came early. They unburied the sepulcher. It was empty, and then they joined the procession for Easter to flower the cross. You might also remember the washing of the feet on Maundy Thursday. That was new this year. We also had our first meditation on the last 7 words of Jesus on Good Friday. We hit a repeat on our great Easter vigil on Saturday night before Easter, and that was a really joyous time. On Ascension, we celebrated our first patronal feast day, and this was when we gave testimonies on all that God was doing in our cell groups. You might remember the huge Chick-fil-A meal, and that was just to eat God's chicken in God's church. That was a great evening. I had to miss the All Saints Feast this year because that was the day that Clementine was born. But I heard that the reading of the necrology and the toasts for the dearly departed went really well, and will be a tradition that we keep moving forward in 2023. So looking ahead, we're going to keep this emphasis on keeping high feast days really, really well. That's going to be a focus for us. We're going to invest a lot in going all out for Holy Week and Epiphany, Ascension, and All Saints, both for the liturgy and for the parties to follow. We'll have our Epiphany Festival in January here at CTK this year with a live band for an English country dance, and we are going to do, again, what we did for Holy Week. One addition this year will be our celebration of Pentecost on May 27 and 28. We've asked our new bishop, Willie Hill, to make a special visit on that day to ordain Tyler to the diaconate and Deacon Spencer to the priesthood on Saturday evening. On the next day, Sunday, I'll be installed as the rector. Ordinations and installations are huge moments in the life of the church, and so we're going to throw a really big party. This theme of centering our lives around communion through the practice of feasting and celebration is not something only for high feast days. Every Sunday, we celebrate the Eucharist. So our potluck feasts have continued to go really well. But as I mentioned before, I don't think the every other week in-person catechesis has gone particularly well. I've also observed that twice per month potlucks has been difficult on people. So we are going to, as I said before, move to only having one potluck each month instead of 2. And we're going to call it an AGAPE feast. We are going to dance together every AGAPE feast. And since it's only once per month, we're really going to ask that people make it a priority. I think this change in schedule will be a lot easier on families and better for centering our lives on communion. Our fourth CTK core value is rooted in history. And I'm really encouraged about how you as a church have intentionally resisted the trend of modernity to spurn the past. Instead, I see you engaging in old traditions with enthusiasm. The liturgy is an obvious example. I was surprised by how attached you all had become to the Merbeck setting of the Mass, but you learned the Willen setting with patience and fortitude. In the end, you loved that one too, and now we have 2 settings of the entire liturgy that we have as part of our parish repertoire. And so we're actually going back to the Merbeck this Sunday. One of the steps we took as a church of just being rooted in history is we completed getting our hymnals and our prayer books in the pews. This was an investment, but we wanted us to have a tangible connection to the riches that come to us by our mother, the church. Another example for how we grew in our historical rootedness was in our year-long engagement with the Apostolic Fathers. Now we know well the characters of Polycarp and Ignatius and Clement and Barnabas. We will continue growing in this way in this year, not by studying the Apostolic Fathers directly, but looking at how the church of old interpreted the Bible, learning their hermeneutic, and practicing how they saw Jesus, the sacraments, and the church in every passage of Scripture. We also embraced again the old practice of house blessings during Epiphany. Several families opened up their homes to their neighbors, and they asked God's blessing on their houses. We're going to continue this practice of the church this January, especially during the season of Epiphany, but throughout the entire year. I would like every person to bless their home in some way, either by hosting a formal house blessing with their cell group and neighbors, or informally marking their doors with Epiphany chalk. We took big steps this year in music and liturgy. Our chamber choir continued to sing for us and assist us in learning new parts of the liturgy. We've added communion hymns and a small group of singers with an accompanist that have committed to leading the congregation during the time of communion every Sunday. Greg Athnos has given generously of his time and expertise in teaching the ensemble harder pieces, and I hope you've noticed and enjoyed the beautiful music that's being offered during the liturgy. A huge thank you to our devoted organists and instrumentalists, David Booth, Lucy Kellum, Doris Moss. These people work so hard to lead us from the organ. Grace, Mark, Sophie, Rosellen serve as our instrumentalists. All of these people are volunteers, and I am proud and thankful for them. A final instance of our growth in rootedness in history is the beautification of our sanctuary. Modern churches are rarely beautiful, and so investing in holy space seems a little old school. But that's a good thing. There's a wisdom of the past in investing in space. Truth is beautiful, and the church is the pillar of truth. So the church ought to be beautiful. You may have noticed that we have begun to add flowers to our altar. Many thanks to Dee Dee Kellum for this. We've been working hard to complete a proposal for the nave, for a renovation of the nave in the sanctuary, and we are almost done with the research and proposal process for that mid-scale renovation. We're also launching a liturgical arts team this year, and their task will be to decorate the nave and the sanctuary. That's this area where I'm sitting now, the nave and the sanctuary, at the beginning of every liturgical season. So I'm really looking forward to you coming on this Sunday. I think you'll be surprised when you walk into church. They've done a great job of making this space beautiful in ways that are themed on the liturgical year. When we look back on 2023, I think one of the big things that we'll notice is how much more beautiful our sanctuary became. Our final core value is mobilized for mission. I hope you can see how mobilized we became as a church in 2022. We have 11 Liturgy Guild teams that function every single week doing the work of worship. A huge thank you to the leaders of each of these teams and all of you who serve faithfully in those roles. Our rallying cry for the year has been to live out an adoptive culture because we serve an adoptive God. One of the ways that this has happened was in our ALMS projects. I love that you've gained a vision for how to give alms through acts of service and money, and have tailored that mercy focus on those who need to be adopted. Each group adopted a group of people to serve as an act of almsgiving this year. We served those who were struggling with drug addiction. We cared for widows, for women in crisis pregnancy. We cared for the elderly, foster parents, and those in prison. We will continue to do these cell group alms projects during both penitential seasons of Lent and Advent. We will do that in 2023, and I foresee that moving forward for the foreseeable future. One big way that we are taking our adoptive culture forward in 2023 is to partner with an organization called Faith Bridge. They're a Christian foster care ministry. They're going to help us minister to foster families and to teach us how our church can do this kind of ministry. I'm really excited about our future adoptive work with FaithBridge. Gosh, how can we talk about being mobilized for ministry without talking about Father Jesse and Christine Barkalow? I have not done a good job of keeping you guys up to date on the incredible thing that God is doing in Colorado Springs. Father Jesse was our first planting curate, and he moved his family to CTK to learn how to plant a church, and that is exactly what he has done. The oratory, as they used to call it, recently selected the name Holy Cross for their church, and it is in the process of becoming a mission. And they have about 55 active members in their launch team. We're so proud of the Barkalows and are so grateful that we, as a church plant, could have such a big role in starting another church. In September, our second planting curate moved to Christ the King. Deacon Spencer and Bailey Amaral have already become so dear to us and are actively preparing to plant a church in Canton. Several families are committed to going with that church plant. So we've been using the phrase, our church is pregnant. 2023 is going to have a big emphasis on planting or mothering a church. Our hope is that the Canton launch team will officially form in the late spring or early summer, and that they would begin worshiping as a distinct extension work sometime in the late fall or winter. We give the timeline to the Lord, but we are excited to see what God is going to do in Canton in 2023. Finally, a big part of 2022 has been my family's season of wandering. If there was any doubt as to our church's true gift of hospitality and the power of our homes, it is forever put to rest. 7 families took us in and let us live in their home with them. In a way, I feel like our church community took us into their womb so that we could be birthed into the Fair Oaks community. 45 seconds from the church. This isn't just significant for the Melton family. This is emblematic of the DNA of our church, and I think it's important that we talk about it in this Vicar's report. We have a commitment to localism, which has had a big impact on how we view our culture and our mission and our church planting. We want to be in the place where the church is, and we want the church to be in the place where we are. The Hollies just moved just up the street from us at another Fair Oaks house just last week. The commitment that we show to our place, our neighborhood, will be replicated in every home, cell group, and church plant. Wow, it was quite a year. I can't wait to see what God is going to do in 2023. I feel like I just walked you through a lot of details. So to close, let's zoom out. Where are we? Where are we going? I've been doing a lot of thinking about this lately. In our first year of planting in 2020, you might remember me making several references to the fact that we were a baby church plant. That our first preview service was when Olive was baptized. And so we would say things like, we're still a baby, we're learning to walk, it's okay if we mess our diapers, figuratively speaking. In 2021 and 2022, we grew a lot, and we became a mission formally. And then we set on developing a mission culture. In some ways, a mission is a lot like a young adult, and I think this is a helpful image for where we are and where we're going. A mission is like a teenager. It's growing rapidly. It's trying to figure out who it is, trying lots of different things to establish its identity and style. This is a good phase. And just like the baby phase, we need to be merciful in our self-assessment and our self-actualization as a church. We're still forming. In 2023, we graduate to being a parish. What is a parish? In many ways, being a parish is like being an adult. Well, what is an adult? And how is an adult different from being a young adult? 3 things come to mind that have an obvious overlap with where we're going as a church. An adult has a strong sense of identity. So does a parish. A parish knows who they are and why. They are secure in that identity. A parish doesn't need to try every little thing. A parish has made choices about what they do and choices about what they do not do. This year, we are going to confirm or make firm patterns of being. We're going to firm up our slogans and way of speaking and our common vocabulary, our traditions, even our cliches. We will enjoy the momentum that occurs when a group of people have done the hard work to be on the same page, theologically, ideologically, culturally, missionally. It is comfortable and stable to be an adult parish. And this year, I think we will begin our journey toward that solid identity. The second thing that describes an adult is that they are ready to parent or adopt. An adult is one who is capable of taking care of another, of giving birth, or of adopting other people. And we are going to adopt our neighborhood more intentionally. We will begin to collaborate with other churches and ministries in this area. Teenage missions are necessarily inwardly focused. Adult parishes are outwardly focused. I'm looking forward to becoming a more adoptive, missionally mature parish in 2023. Of course, the biggest instance of us becoming an adult church is by birthing another church in Canton. And finally, adults specialize. So it's identity, adoption, and specialization. Adults specialize in what they're good at. So do parishes. I've already gone over some of the things that we will specialize in 2023. We've cut a lot, and we've added only a little. We don't plan to add any big programs in 2023. Rather, we're going to focus on our high feast days celebrations and making those great, our discipleship really deep, our life together sweet, and so on. In 2023, we're going to focus on doing things really well. This video is produced the week before Advent starts. The first Sunday in Advent is the beginning of the liturgical year. It is our New Year's Day. So it is the day that we set our intentions for the year, and we bring our plans and our worship and our commitments. At CTK, we ask members to commit to 4 things: that they prioritize Sunday worship and high feast days as the most inviolable parts of their life and calendar. The second is that they participate in weekly catechesis, and that's both for children and adults. We ask that they commit to their local cell group, and we ask that they would tithe on their income. On the first Sunday in Advent, we as a church reaffirm that commitment together in the liturgy. But the one detail that is needed for great planning is to know what each family is going to pledge for their tithe for the next calendar year. If we don't know what the church is pledging, we won't be able to plan how best to steward the tithes for the kingdom of God. And so we'll either underplan and therefore waste, or overplan and fret, and that hurts your trust. So I exhort you to take a few minutes in the next few days to fill out your pledge survey. This will allow us to steward the work that is needed. A word on tithing. We don't talk about tithing a lot, but it's an extremely important thing to talk about. Tithing is difficult. 10% is a significant amount of our annual income, but it is a biblical command and a part of our baptismal vows and our member commitments. Tithing is an acknowledgement that all things come from God. The very breath that we breathe is a gift. Keep in mind that the spoiling of the entire universe was begun when Adam and Eve took what God had given to them as a gift and clutched at it to take for themselves. Don't make the same mistake. We don't often talk about it here, but in Advent we do talk about our money. And it is my duty to remind you that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Another way of putting that is that your relationship with your money is one of the most spiritually vulnerable areas of your life. Tithing protects us from so many of the dangers associated with money. I highly recommend setting up your tithe as an automatic draft near the first of the month. The scriptures teach us that our tithe should be a first fruit, not a last fruit. Okay, sermon over. I'll leave you with a note of inspiration. So much of what we've been able to accomplish over the last year has been because we are a tithing church. When God's people are faithful in this way and give sacrificially, He blesses their endeavors. The mission goes forward. It is an honor to serve a church that is so obedient to God and so committed to a common theme or to a common mission and belief. I honestly cannot wait to see what God will do in 2023. And I'm thankful to be on this journey with you.